Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to this, the Cult Movie Podcast, Cult Potato. As always, I am your host, Campion, and joining me is a man who I hope you've all come to know and love and cherish in your heart more than your greatest heroes. Joining me is, of course, the man, the myth, the one-man army, the legend, Mr. Grady Hooker. Welcome to the show.
Why did I get hyped up so much? That worries me.
Because I forgot to write a proper intro for this episode, so I just said the first thing that came to my mind.
Alright, I'm gonna take the positive intro, man. We take those, we zip them up, and we play them to ourselves when we're having a bad night.
Yeah, usually whenever I have like a positive intro, I usually uppercut it with something negative. But now it's just all positive because I didn't write anything.
That's fair. I delay this episode a week, and we're recording later than usual, and you've had plenty of time, and you still couldn't write an intro.
True. Or maybe we could have just done it last week, Grady, when I still remembered my proper intro. How's about that?
You seem to be allergic to writing things down.
I am not allergic to writing things down. I am just allergic to remembering where I leave the things I write stuff down. Look, Grady, I have a lot of pieces of paper in my life, alright? You can't expect me to keep track of all of them.
Would you say that you have a lot of pages of paper? You still there, buddy?
I'm still here. I'm just marveling at this fantastic segue that you've got going on. Why is that segue fantastic, Grady?
That's because we're talking about the WWE Superstar Paige biopic, Fighting With My Family, the cult classic that totally came out 3 years ago, starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson.
Yeah, I mean, starring such cult movie actors as Dwayne Johnson and Nick Frost and Vince Vaughn.
Look, I get to stretch the definition, okay? It's definitely stretched. I think I took this more as a festival film than a cult classic necessarily. It definitely
debut at Sundance.
Yeah, I've had more people come to me and say like they've never heard of it, and then I suggest it, and then they love it. And whether that's bad marketing or whether that's they've ignored it because they thought it was a wrestling film.
It is a wrestling film, Grady.
It's a drama that happens to be based around wrestling, which is also what wrestling is. I don't know, it's just led to a lot of people who probably should have watched it but didn't. You know, they enjoy it when they do get to see it.
Yeah. Didn't it also make back like well over nearly 4 times its budget? We
did the math. It made a chunk of money. I don't remember exactly. I'm sure you'll tell us at the end of the episode exactly how much.
Was it also quite critically well received?
So it stars Black Widow as Paige in a wrestling family to father Nick Frost and to mother...
I would have gone with a Midsummer Girl, but alright.
To mother Lena Headey.
She's had a very successful career since this film.
She's picked up.
Would you say because of this film?
Dun dun dun.
Well, this was one of her name is that last name. I believe it's Florence Pa or Florence. It's P-U-G-H. How do I say that without just saying Pa? Because
I've only ever heard it said as Pugh.
Lawrence Pugh. Okay, we'll go with that. Florence Pugh, who has of course had a fantastic career. The same year this film came out, she was also in Midsommar, which was a very successful, very critically acclaimed horror film. She's also jumped into the MCU as okay, is she the new... Because I never saw Black Widow. So is she, like, the new Black Widow, or...?
She'll be the one taking over that sort of mantle. I don't believe...
Scarlett Johansson is out of the MCU.
Her character's name is not Black Widow. It's Yelena, but it's close enough.
She's one of the Black Widows, though, isn't she? Like, because that's a whole thing.
This is not a Marvel movie podcast, but yes.
Hey, what were we talking about before we started recording?
A Marvel movie. Doctor Strange, okay.
You know, for two people who claim to not like Marvel movies, we talk about them an awful lot.
The funny part is that's going to completely and utterly date this episode, because this episode's not even going to be coming out until, like, August. And we're sitting here talking about Doctor Strange 2.
Which was a passable movie. I thought was pretty decent. Better than the first one. That's my review.
But was it better than Fighting with My Family?
Doctor Strange is more my kind of shtick, because it's just dumb superhero schlock. Whereas this was like an actual movie. So
an actual movie. Put that on the box.
An actual movie. See, I know how to really get really know how to get those sound bites out there.
Well, I guess coming into this movie, like, I'm the big wrestling guy. I've seen the movie. I've shown it to multiple people. Yeah. This is arguably me forcing you to watch it. Like, I'm showing it to you. What were your expectations coming in, and then how did they develop as you watched the film?
Well, okay, so I had heard of this movie beforehand, and I had heard that it was actually a pretty solid movie. So I was expecting it to, actually be a pretty decent watch. Like your standard, sports, rags to riches kind of, coming of age kind of sports story. And that was what I got, but it was honestly a lot better than I thought it was going to be. A sentiment that I feel a lot of people share about this movie. Because it was one of the production companies involved was WWE Studios, who do not have a fantastic track record when it comes to quality films. I've seen a number of their films, and they are
bad.
They vary in quality. Hey, I liked The Scorpion King as a kid. I kind of like that movie.
Okay, you can have one of their movies that were good.
Even though I'm pretty sure that wasn't WWE Films. I think that was just back when it was still like the WWF or something.
It definitely
was mostly
WWF
produced by
time.
Universal, and that was like a spin-off of The Mummy. Something I was already disposed well to liking. So,
I'm gonna scroll through WWE Studios and see. They technically are credited with the Scorpion King, so you can have that one.
Yes, I'm also on that page.
Garbage.
Which yep, okay.
All 16 of the Marines are horrible. All 16 of the 12 rounds are horrible. The Condemned was poop. The Crapperone was the Crapperone. Knucklehead, garbage.
I see that they... why are they accredited with Oculus? Why? Why are they involved? Where is their involvement in the production companies? Blumhouse Productions, WWE Studios. Why?
I think they just threw money.
Yeah, because from what I heard, Oculus was a really good movie, wasn't it? Like, a lot of people really liked Oculus.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess they just attached their name to it. Yeah, but Jingle All the Way 2 is horrible. There's not a lot of good movies on this list.
Sorry, I'm just baffled. I did not know Oculus. I'm sorry, but I just have to mention this. The Orkney mentions that the cursed mirror shown in the film was recovered from the Levesque estate.
Ah, that's how they do it,
Triple H. Yeah, because his real name is Paul Levesque. So...
That's the one way that they tie the WWE into this film.
Why? Because I don't know if you knew about that film beforehand, but I did. It was like, it's like this kind of... It's this popular horror film. It's like, yeah, this knows how to do horror really well. It's like a serious, well-done horror film, but it's just WWE. It's like, okay. Triple H owned a cursed mirror for some reason. Did that factor into any WWE storylines? Has Triple H ever owned a cursed mirror?
No.
Like, did the Undertaker ever choke slam him through one or something?
Not that I am aware of. And I think the thing with Oculus and the thing with Fighting with My Family here that both of them had going for them is I think WWE were hands off. They did not sit there and, write the script. They didn't sit there and push their bits and pieces. Other than Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, who is arguably not even a WWE superstar at this point, the superstar people are cameos. It was a script written by Dwayne. It was all set up and ready to go, and they just sort of slapped their name. It
was written by Stephen Merchant. Let's not give
close.
Dwayne some more, any more credit than he deserves.
I'm sorry. I misremembered my facts. This is why I'm not the facts guy.
It was written and directed by Stephen Merchant, well known for a number of things. He's worked a lot with Ricky Gervais. He's appeared in a lot of different projects over the years, and yeah, he wrote and directed this. So I can understand why this would have turned out as good as it was, because it was done by an actual writer and director who knew what they were doing.
I'm sorry, I believe Dwayne The Rock Johnson was producer for the first time?
He was producer, yes.
My bad. I mixed up. I thought writer for the first time, it was producer for the first time.
Yes. And both Merchant and The Rock both make small cameo appearances in the movie.
One of them as themselves.
One of them as themselves, yes. And even though The Rock is front and center on the poster, dead center on the poster, actually, right next to the film's actual stars, and then you see Paige's brother Zach way in the background, even though he's the star, one of the stars of the movie, because he's the protagonist of the film. It's he's all the way back there. He's behind his mum, who is more lines than The Rock does.
Yeah, but you got to think about the star power for this movie.
We haven't mentioned this. His mum, but his mum is played by Paige's mother is played by Laura Headey. She's in Game of Thrones. Game of Thrones was still going at this point, wasn't it?
I don't remember exactly when Game of Thrones ended. It would have either been during or very close to the end. Yeah,
she would have been. Her popularity, she still was a very recognized actor.
Yeah, the cast on this is nutty when you look at it all. As you say, Stephen Merchant, everybody.
A wrestler biopic film about a wrestler who, whilst in the wrestling world, Paige is very well known. Outside of it, she's pretty much unknown.
I'd say she's probably more well known after this film, but yeah, definitely for sure. Yeah, she's not a mainstream human.
Yeah, I mean, for outside the wrestling world, it's who are famous wrestlers that you know? It's okay, Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant, Randy Savage,
The Rock, Austin,
John Cena. That's it. It's 6 guys. Maybe Undertaker, maybe. But that's about it.
Yeah, and then they bring out this shy little girl from Norwich, England, and shove her on out and put her at the front and center of the movie. And you said that it was better than you expected. But I guess overall, I'm still waiting to hear, did you enjoy the film?
Yes, I definitely enjoyed this film. It's not my cup of tea. Not because it isn't wrestling, because against all odds, you've somehow managed to get me into wrestling over these last couple of years, and I will never understand how you did that. But
perseverance.
You tried for years and years and years, and I'm fine, I'll actually sit down and watch some wrestling, okay? I actually kind of like this. Oh, God damn it.
Perseverance pays off, people. You heard it here.
Yeah. I'm just not into these kinds of sports movies in general. The closest I've ever gotten is to watching sports anime, which is a whole different beast entirely. But is there a wrestling anime? Hang on.
I'm pretty sure there is.
Yeah. I feel okay, yep, Kikinomon and Ultimate Muscle, of course.
The reason I was really hoping that you enjoyed this film...
I forgot about Tiger Mask, the most famous one, of course. Jushin Liger got his own anime?
I'm not surprised.
I am also not surprised.
I want to take the role with this movie of the hater, of the critic. So I was really hoping that you were going to like this movie.
No, I like this movie. What can I say? I mean, there are some things I can kind of rag on. I feel there are things that we both might try to rag on it, but I think that the real strong point of this movie, because the film itself is a pretty paint-by-numbers, sports movie. Someone from a small town, finally gets a shot at the big league, and then they, win the big championship at the end. There isn't really any real twists or turns in there. What really sold me on the movie was its cast, because as we mentioned before, stellar cast all around, from the main actors to even a bunch of the side actors. They have some very talented people here, and they put on some genuinely good performances. And in a way, it kind of does the thing that wrestling does, where you get, even though it is on its own, it's a very cliched story oftentimes, but the people, performing and doing stuff really manage to kind of grab you and drag you into the story and make you care about them. And then I thought this film managed to do that very, very well.
Yeah, I think as much as the story is about Paige, as you say, coming up, going through NXT, going through developmental, and eventually getting that championship win at the end of the end of the movie, I think it is just as much about that family dynamic, which the more, I guess, deep you are into wrestling lore, you learn, it's actually a lot worse than how it's being portrayed, and it's already being portrayed pretty badly. Family is not the nicest set of people in the world, but like her relationship with Zach during it, and those two actors just bouncing off, and the full arc with Roy coming out of prison. I got to give those non-wrestling story elements probably more of the props than the wrestling elements. Like, the wrestling elements were not the best part of this movie.
No, like, I agree with that, because, like, as I said before, like, Zach he's not just a secondary character, he's the antagonist of the film. Like, it's Paige and Zach, we're seeing, like, both of their stories play out, and see them, like, develop as people over the course of the movie. And I gotta admit, there are definitely some things in here that I was not expecting for, WWE to put in a film effectively about them. Because whilst at times this film does kind of aggrandize the kind of, being a wrestler and what it's like to kind of be in that world, there are a surprising number of punches that they do not pull in this movie, which I really appreciated, because like Vince Vaughn's character, who, as far as I understand, isn't explicitly a real person. He's more of like an amalgamation of like a lot of different people, because I don't think they'd have the same guy doing both talent scouting and running the actual training sessions and then still being with them on the day that they like debut at WrestleMania. I don't think, one guy does that. I'm pretty sure they have like a bunch of different people to fill each of those individual roles. But he has that moment, when he's talking about how he he effectively like destroyed his body and his marriage, just trying to make The Rock look good. And it's just like, okay, this guy was just a jobber who somehow managed to, and now he's working as like a wrestling trainer, and he doesn't want that life for other people. That's why he didn't bring audio at that life. And I'm surprised that they said something about that. Yeah, I just didn't expect them to really pull that, or how they had the thing of how, like, some of the initial recruits that Paige was brought in with, how they were effectively all just models, or they were there to look good. They weren't actual wrestlers. I'm surprised that they kind of went with that. Of course, there's some other stuff that I don't super agree with, but I'll throw it back to you, Grady, for your retort there.
Yeah, as much as the stuff that I want to rag on this film is like the unrealistic elements of some of it, because you're retelling a story with only the bright parts, right?
Yeah.
And you sort of fast forward through a lot of the unglamorous stuff in the middle. There are a lot of things like what you're saying where they hit it right, and that scene where Vince Vaughn is sitting there with Florence Pugh and sort of telling the story about someone who, let the main star throw him off the top of the cell and smash through and bust up his body and lost his wife and started cheating on you with the mailman. You like followed that. Like, that was a thing that I felt like gripped into just from Vince Vaughn telling me. And then at the very end of the movie, having The Rock come through and be like, oh yeah, he once threw himself off a cell to make me look good. And you were like, and then you connect it all together, and
yeah,
I don't know, it just sort of brought a sense of realism to it.
Yeah. Well, even though I'm pretty sure, I actually don't think The Rock would remember somebody like that, but that's just me.
I don't know. Some people may remember the people who made them stars.
Yeah. And it honestly reminded me a lot. It just struck me when I was watching this. I'm just like, wait, is Vince Vaughn actually a really good actor? Have I only just seen him in garbage movies up until now?
Quite possibly.
Where's Vince Vaughn from the Internship and Jurassic Park 2? Why is he suddenly a great actor? He really surprised me.
Yeah, I think Vince Vaughn's character is like other than Paige and Zach, he's the character who brings you through the story. Like, they are the story, but he's grabbing it and pulling it forward. He's always the one there that's like, now we're doing training, now we're going to the beach, now he's explaining this wrestling concept to you, or he's the one cutting Zach and, not picking up the phone, and he's just always there as the story beats go.
If I could relate this to something that I actually do understand, if we relate this to, say, like, a high fantasy epic story, where Paige and Zach are like the two small farm village children who are being tested by the Great Wizard, aka Vince Vaughn, and Zach, it turns out he isn't the chosen one, but he prepared his whole life to be. But it turns out Paige is, and so she has to go on his journey on a journey with the wizard, and the wizard has to be the one to train and prepare her to make sure that she's ready for the arduous things ahead. Which I guess that makes AJ Lee the evil sorcerer at the end. I guess.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, I guess you can tie it to, like, the same sort of story beats are going to go through everything. As you said, this isn't massively innovative of a film. Yeah. It's just taking a paint by numbers and putting it on a different canvas. I at least haven't seen it done with the wrestling journey before. Or
at least to this level. Like, I imagine it does. The only other wrestling movie I've seen is, like, The Wrestler, which is super depressing. It looks at, like, all the really dark and horrible sides of wrestling. So,
there's no teaching a blind kid to wrestle in that film.
No. And, okay, just touching on the blind kid, Grady, because you know more about wrestling than I do. It says at the end of the film, oh yeah, he did eventually become a wrestler. Did he? Was that just something the film being like, just trying to tug on my heartstrings? And just like, oh look, he's helping out this boy who's blind. Look at him be such a good person.
I'll get back to you on that.
Okay.
I think my understanding is yes. I just don't want to commit.
I assume it's someone on
that.
Like the indie circuit or something.
Yeah, it's not like a WWE Superstar or an AEW Superstar or anything like that.
They would not take a chance on something like that.
No.
I am okay. I feel like we've praised this film enough, Grady. Do you want to move on to the negatives of this film? Because even though I did like this film, I did enjoy it. I do have a few problems with this movie, Grady.
Yes, James Chilvers seems to be someone who wrestled for that company, WAW in Norwich, who was in fact blind. So yes, true story.
Okay. There's my movie about him.
He was the subject of a BBC 3 documentary called Step Into the Ring. So if you really want to go watch that, there you go.
Oh, okay. Well, that sounds interesting then. So, Grady, do you want to move on to the various problems we have with this movie?
I think our list of problems are going to be different to a point, because my list of problems comes from somebody who is a wrestling fan and sort of picking it apart from those points. Like, there was just so much that you wouldn't see happening in the wrestling world, where, she got accelerated so fast through all of this. She wasn't, they're just letting four trainees...
Because that never happens.
They're just letting 4 trainees, 3 of which have no experience, with no trainer around, just practice in the ring. They're letting these models, who do eventually become decent wrestlers later on, try a suicide dive just because Paige thinks they could. Like, there's just a lot of things that were not as, I guess, faithful to the wrestling side of things, but also, doesn't matter.
Didn't they cut out Paige's entire run as NXT Women's Champion?
Yeah, they cut out NXT as a whole and just sort of turned NXT into the Performance Center.
Yeah, yeah. Like, there were a couple of NXT matches, but it's not like, oh, it's this actual, like, TV show, which actually has, which actually has pretty significant attendance. It's like, no, it's a small little ring, like this small little back alley ring that just has, like, a few people attending, not like a proper product, like televised product.
Yeah, at that time, it probably would have been closer to the back alley stuff, but it was still, being filmed on TV.
Yeah.
She was champion for a good while before she showed up.
It would have had I think it would have had a larger audience than what they showed in the movie, though.
Yeah. Whereas what they showed you there was probably more of the, what in the wrestling world is called the Florida Loop, which is where you take the less established people from the Performance Center and you just take them around Florida. Which is where the Performance Center is, and you just put on smaller shows like that, but like that doesn't matter. That's me sitting here, like little niggling complaints. From a viewer's perspective, I think those changes were needed. I think that they made the movie flow a lot better. They cut what they needed to cut, and they just made the movie work rather than trying to be 100% real.
Yeah, like, because Paige was in NXT for quite a while before. I don't quite know how long, but she was in it for quite a while before she got moved up to Raw and became Divas Champion. Like that, it would have been just like, oh yeah, Paige has done this. She's doing all this. She's succeeding really well. And this is the NXT. She's the champion. All of this, and now she's wrestled. Now she's the go home. Wait, it's not the go home Raw. It's the What's the one after?
Forgetting as well, so I'm gonna just ignore you and leave
you.
It
has
hanging.
An actual term, and I can't remember what it is. It's like, oh, now she's on the Raw after WrestleMania, which is like a big deal, and she's challenging AJ Lee and all that, and yeah. And I am dead. Okay, like I know very little about wrestling. I'm still learning a lot about it. I am dead certain The Rock was not factored into the real life Paige's story anywhere near as much as he was in this film. He shows up like twice, right?
He shows up to give them advice, yes, and then he shows up to let her family know that she's going to be debuting.
I can guarantee, I didn't look this up, but I can guarantee you neither of those happened. Neither of those events happened. The Rock would not have called her family, and there's no way he would have shown up on some random SmackDown taping.
There is a chance. It's not a huge chance. But he did sort of pop up here and there. His explanation was like, I'm filming a movie, which is a very Rock thing to do. To just rock up somewhere and be like, no pun intended, hey, filming a movie, I'm just going to show up today. Which is what he did for the filming of this movie, with all those scenes you see later on with the fake AJ Lee and with Florence Pugh doing their match. He just showed up out of nowhere and shocked everybody. So I guess it's kind of like referencing that almost, and honestly, what he did. The filming of some of those scenes at the end with the AJ versus Paige match is some of my favorite things ever. I don't know if you followed, I guess, the behind the scenes stories of that.
Oh, I've that one. I haven't heard a lot. That one I have definitely heard of.
Look, I don't want to go too deep into the wrestling lore here, but AJ Lee was not played by AJ Lee in the movie. It was Zelina Vega. AJ Lee is married to CM Punk, very famous wrestler who walked out on the WWE, now wrestling under the AEW banner. They knew they were going to get CM Punk chants the entire time while they're trying to film this scene.
Yeah. Yeah. Like WWE, they'll chant CM Punk just for whatever reason. As far as I can, like, I'm not too deep into the wrestling lore, but it honestly seems that whenever they're even remotely bored, they'll just start throwing out the CM Punk chants. I don't think they do it as much anymore, ever since he came back. But I remember a period that for a long time, like a long time, whenever they were even remotely displeased with something,
yeah, it's pretty much like a protest chant. And so yeah, The Rock just calls up CM Punk in the middle of this arena and just puts him on speaker to the microphone, to basically shut everybody up so they can film the damn movie.
Yeah. And from what I heard, some people weren't very happy about that.
Yeah, look,
that he did that.
Do you want the movie to work, or do you want people to be chanting CM Punk throughout it?
Yeah. And, to be honest, they were unhappy, but what are they going to do? Tell The Rock to fuck
He
off?
is The Rock.
Who's going to do that?
Yeah, I don't think anybody can sit here and argue with The Rock. I feel like you said, let's talk about the negative elements, and then I turned it back to positive stuff, so I'm just going to let you complain about the movie for a little while.
Okay. Because for me, it's the wrestling stuff, some of it I could kind of pick up on, like the stuff where they kind of rushed it through NXT, other stuff I really didn't. But, something that really irked me with the film is that there are just a lot of scenes which feel just so, like, emotionally manipulative. Like, just nakedly so. Like, I get it. A movie is supposed to manipulate your emotions, especially, you know, a film like this where it's like a feel-good, you know, coming-of-age rising star kind of film. Like, you expected of this. But then there's just some things, like, where they're just like, oh man, but look, the Knight family run this wrestling business for all of these, you know, troubled kids throughout the neighborhood, and they just teach them to wrestle to keep them off the streets, and I just sat there like, come on. Come on. It felt like they were trying really hard to kind of tug on my heart.
Yeah, what's the opposite of demonized? I guess angelized? They angelized a lot of what the Knight family did, around the training, etc.
And I looked them up a bit after watching the film, and
oh yeah,
100%, much more
100%.
positive light than what I read. I assume you know more about it. I don't know how deep.
I guess like if people want to do their own research, go ham. They're not the best family in the world. Let's put it like that.
No. Although a couple of them actually do make cameo appearances in the film, like not just with the, they're like, cause there's archive footage at the end from a documentary that they ran a few years ago, which is what this film is actually primarily based on. But a couple of the Knight's family members do make like you know, they do play a couple of minor roles in the film. Like I think the garbage wrestler that Zack fights against, I think that's the real life Roy, if I'm not mistaken. And I think that, like, that kind of gang member guy who was trying to lead all the good children astray, I think that was played by, like, the actual real life Zack.
I'll take your word for it. I don't have those facts in front of me. So I will just wildly believe you.
See, that's why we got two fact people for this.
That's correct. You're the film guy.
Film facts.
But yeah, it was a decent film. It's all I can say about it, really, is like it wasn't the most amazing film in the world, but I feel like the reason people don't give it a shot is because they say, oh, it's just a wrestling film. Like, oh, I don't understand wrestling, so I'm not gonna enjoy it, or I'm not gonna understand it.
Yeah, because I feel like they explain, like, some of the wrestling concepts in there pretty well. Like, you know, the stuff with, like, you know, feels and faces gets briefly touched on, and like how important, like, it's just like I would do a storytelling in the ring, but how you are on the mic is really good, and like just how, you know, a wrestler needs to get themselves over with the fans, essentially.
Yeah, they knew what they had to explain, because if you just went into this and didn't explain any of it, it's going to get torn apart and it's going to be impossible to watch. They have to do an amount of explaining, and I think that's probably where they nailed it the most, is they explained enough, but not too much. So you're not bogged down with wrestling terms, you don't have to listen to 473 episodes of Wrestling Roundup to understand what's happening in the film.
You don't have to go in depth into like wrestling.
No, you can just go out and enjoy the film, and it's very self-contained in that manner. You could go into this with zero knowledge of what pro wrestling even is, and you could still enjoy the film.
Yeah. And because I do have some questions, right?
I hope I can answer them,
because I know you know a lot more about wrestling than I do. So the three girls that Paige kind of makes friends with in NXT when she's there, right? Like, do they have actual real life counterparts? I assume they're not like one-to-ones, because I don't recognize any of their names. And one of their names was Jerry Lynn, which caught me off guard, because that was one of the names where I'm just like, I don't quite know who that was, but I'd heard that was a wrestler. So I'm like, okay, that must be the actual Jerry Lynn Then I looked it up, and it's like,
Yeah,
Jerry
he
Lynn
is.
is a man, Grady. Jerry Lynn is a man who was
Yes,
significantly
I'd say he's probably in
older.
his 60s, 70s at this point.
Yeah. He was like,
Yeah,
what,
quite an
ECW
old-fashioned
wrestler
guy.
or something?
I don't think they have
Yeah.
one-to-ones. I think there's parallels you can draw. They're wearing wrestling gear from a few of the wrestlers. One of them's wearing Charlotte's gear, one of them's wearing Eve's gear, and I can't quite remember Alexa Bliss's gear. The third one is wearing, but none of them sort of represent specific people. It's more just the concept, I guess, of the very real concept of models coming into wrestling and having no experience, but it's not about pro wrestling, it's about entertaining.
Yeah. Although I do have a feeling that if they when they bring models in, they probably give them, just a wee bit more training before they actually have them start, doing
You
those
might be
sorts
surprised.
of moves on people. True. And because what I'm wondering is because surely Paige had NXT contemporaries that they could have had characters represent, people who are still there. They're still there at WWE. So I'm kind of wondering why they didn't. Was that just a licensing kind of thing? I'm pretty sure, don't WWE have the licenses to those people? Or were they people who'd already left? And so they couldn't
I think it's a
really
few
pay for
different
those?
combinations. Some of them you'll have to pay, as you say, to appear, and it's just a bit easier, I guess, right? Because if these were real people that we were referencing, then that's 3 more stories or laws you need to follow for a non-fan, and for fans, where they'll pick apart that it wasn't correct. And so it's so much easier to just throw in 3 generic women into this storyline, and they can play the roles. If I recall correctly, I think one of them might be based on Summer Rae, who was around that Paige era in NXT and came from a lingerie football background, from memory, not from pro wrestling. And there's a couple like that just around their mannerisms and stuff, but I feel like it worked better being an amalgamation rather than a carbon copy.
Yeah. Fair enough. And just one last little complaint.
Complain
because
away.
I just remembered it. Yeah, because I also feel because I did a little bit of research on this film, not a ton, but I did a little. And as far as I understand, and correct me if I'm wrong, feel free, because I assume you actually watched NXT itself
Yes.
around this time. I'm just assuming, so you were actually watched
I
the
might not
actual
remember
version
all
of
of
this,
it,
rather,
but
whereas
yes, I
I've
did
only
watch
seen
it.
the fictionalized. Yeah. So, because Paige, one of her big character arcs, so the whole thing is I'm not like the other girls, I'm my own thing. I'm going for my own unique thing, and people call her Freak throughout the film and stuff. I don't think that was super representative of what Paige was actually like, because didn't she kind of tweak her goth image sort of as she kind of leaned more into that as she was going through?
I think she had a
NXT.
chunk of it. They did sort of take what you had at the end, that speech that she has when she debuts, and just crank that up to 10 as the perception throughout the entire film. She did always have that sort of different vibe, just because she's alternate.
Oh yeah. I assume they pulled some of it, because quite often with wrestling stuff they pull quite a lot from their actual lives and stuff. So I'm not saying that it's all fake, but I'm just saying that it's cranked up a bit.
Yeah,
and
they
changed a
took
lot for
the
film
element
itself.
and then just turned it up to 11 because that's what makes a better film character.
Yeah. I also looked it up. Apparently, Paige herself was naturally blonde as well, which I thought was kind of funny. So I'm assuming that point in the film where she dyes her hair blonde, I think that was more just kind of a cheeky nod to real life, when in reality it was the opposite. She started dyeing her hair black rather than.
Yeah, I'm not
trying to
aware
dye blonde
of
stuff.
Paige ever wrestling blonde. So yeah, I'm sure I can find some, but I'm not remembering her ever being wrestling blonde. I know she's had highlights and stuff like that through some chunks of her stuff, but never to the point that what we saw in the film.
Yeah. And as a bit of a fun fact, Florence Pugh, the actor who played Paige in the film, she's also naturally blonde and dyed it black for the film. So there's a nice bit of a coincidence there for you.
Yeah, I think Florence Pugh did amazingly well emulating that look.
Oh yeah, yeah. She's a brilliant actor. She's done a lot of really great stuff. Like, this was one of her breakout films, like, because this came out the same year as Midsommar, and I think these two films really kind of put her on the map. And of course now she's in the MCU, which is like further kind of like catapulted her into some real fame there. So yeah, she's great. The whole cast is great. But Grady, now we get to the fun part of the review, where usually I'm the fact guy, but you know, I'll do the film facts. But there are, Grady, do you want to talk about some of the
There's controversies about this film?
Have we reached that point?
I don't know what
I know, right? Anyway, I just get to sit back and I just get to let you handle that. This ain't my can of worms.
What are the controversies? What are you talking about?
I can't actually tell if this is KFA, but you'll shoot right now.
I have nothing in front of me.
The controversies of Paige in general, not the film, just
okay.
The person.
Okay, that makes sense.
Those Grady.
Yeah. I don't know how huge I want to get into it, but Paige has had a fun life. She's
one way to put
been around the bush. She's done a lot of things. She's had a lot of surgery done. She's dated a cocaine addicted crazy Mexican man. Got engaged to a crazy cocaine Mexican man. She's currently dating a not lovely man called Ronnie Radke. She's had a, similar to Jennifer Lawrence, like private photo leak that happened at a good point in the film, and I think there was some self-harm worries around that time as well. Yeah, a bit of a rough time for her. She hasn't had the smoothest path. You know, we sort of leave the film at what I would say is probably peak Paige without a massive amount of issues. And then it kind of goes downhill or goes off a cliff with her personal life and things that just happen around there.
Yeah. And I'm curious, Grady, but if those had happened during the production of this movie, do you think they would have actually included it?
No, I think they rose-tinted glasses the story a lot, and I think they would have cut these as well.
Yeah. Like, because as crappy as it is, because I know the Knight family themselves have also gotten into a number of controversies over the years, but I think if you're just looking at it as a film, just as a film, I think that it is fine. I think that the approach it takes really works for the story, and everything else, I guess we could just save for a future episode of Dark Side of the Ring or something.
No, they're confident that they'll make another season. I guess, like, none of the things that have happened to Paige makes her a bad human. She's just had a lot of things happen to her. But rough life, for sure. And including a lot of stuff that was rough prior to signing with NXT and doing all of that stuff. But, hey.
Yeah.
They just cut that out and ignore it, because it's not important.
Well, I mean, I'm sure it's important to her.
Not important to a movie story.
Not important to a movie, like, because even though they did call it down, because the movie itself is actually pretty well paced, and I guess kind of bogging it down with those sorts of things really wouldn't.
What they did was good. If they wanted to add more, I as you say, the pacing was so good, I don't think they could have improved on it. They would have made it worse.
No. Yeah, because I think this is kind of a thing that happens whenever you make a biopic. It's like, yeah, you want to tell like an accurate version of this person's life, but you also need to make a good product to sell to people, and you do kind of, need to trim all of those bits out to make it, more presentable and more watchable. Just like wrestling, Grady. Oh, you see what I did there? You see how I brought it all back?
I don't know if you want me to clap you or to just run away.
Smack
You're over a
me.
Discord call right now, so I can't smack you. But yes, sure, whatever segue you want, you can have it. Talk about your damn money facts.
You got a good segue at the beginning. I just wanted my own, alright? And something that's also very interesting about this, because this movie was quite successful, is that apparently there are talks of doing something similar, but making a Hulk Hogan biopic.
Let's not.
Of all the wrestlers we could make one about, could we please not make one about Hulk Hogan? Could we have an Andre a biopic like this? I feel like that could be.
It wasn't
really
like
good.
this. We had a ESPN special about Andre that told a lot of his life story. I think it was ESPN, which is pretty good.
Well, I think Hulk Hogan's already had one of those as well, so we don't need any more of Hulk. We're fine.
Yeah.
I think a Bret Hart one would be really good. I think you could make a really good Bret Hart movie.
Why not? At this point,
I don't think WWE would allow it because of.
hey, you signed on as a legend contract now, so you're fine.
True, but I just feel like there's a couple of things they couldn't really cover, or at the very least they'd have. I don't know if WWE would be happy covering in an honest way.
They've loved their revisionist history, so we'll see how they.
Yeah, I mean, take your pick. It's either the one they gloss over is either the screw job or his brother Owen. Like you can't really. Those are very big parts of his life, so I don't think you're gonna really skip out on either of those. Like, I feel like the screw job, they could. I feel like they're at a comfortable point where they can kind of talk about that now because like Shawn Michaels and Bret Hart have kind of moved past that. I don't think you could talk about Owen. I think that's something they would just ignore.
Yeah, there's a reason the Owen Hart Memorial Cup is at AEW and not at WWE. We'll leave it at that. Yeah. But before you,
wow, I managed to.
I was going to say, before you scare every single listener away with the wrestling talk, and it was you that brought it up, not me.
I know. I'm turning into you, Grady.
Just talk about your damn facts, buddy.
Alright, so my facts are, as we've alluded to before, this film actually did, well, surprisingly well. And I say surprising because leading up to this, I remember a lot of people talking about this and saying how they didn't think it was going to do very well. Before I get into the numbers, Grady, did you think this was going to do well when you first heard about it?
Oh no, I thought there was no way people would go out of their way to watch this film.
No, neither did I. But yeah, it was made on a budget of $11 million, and it made at the box office $41.5 million. So even if you account for advertising, that's still a significant amount of money made by this movie. This is a very successful film, and critically, it did amazing. On Rotten Tomatoes, it holds a 93%
Cult classic,
grade.
buddy. Cult classic.
A 93. Even Roger oh no, not Roger Ebert, because I think he was dead by the time it came out. But even a lot of people like this movie, and I'm very surprised I like this movie, which I was also surprised by.
Yeah, I still think it's an all-round movie that people will enjoy. You just got to give it the chance. And, I don't trust people to give it the chance, which is why I didn't expect the film would do well.
Yeah. Well, because I know people aren't willing to give it a chance because I didn't give it a chance before I saw it. It wasn't until I was watching it for this podcast that I'm just like, this is actually a pretty solid movie. So much so, I ended up watching it twice. I watched it last week because I thought we were going to do it last week, and then I'm like, I guess I have to watch it again because I've forgotten. Because I needed to refresh myself, and I watched it again. I'm like, yeah, this is still a good movie.
Still a good movie.
Yeah. So anyway, can't wait for that Hulk Hogan biopic. That's gonna be
So the next film that we're gonna be talking about is a film that you can't sit here and argue with me about it being a cult classic. Like, at least a whole 2 different websites called it a cult classic when I was looking for cult classic films that starred pro wrestlers, right? It is the...
If it's the film that I'm thinking of, I'm pretty sure this is considered one of the...
We're not doing that film ever.
Cult classic.
It's a rib. I've taken that film off the schedule. It's the 3rd episode in the Wrestler season. The episode number, I can't math off the top of my head where we are. It came out in, let me clicky onto the next page. It came out in 1988. And it features somebody who... Honestly, even though he was a wrestler, I barely know the guy. I think he wore a kilt. And chewed bubblegum or something? Hubba Bubba? Was he the Hubba Bubba guy? He was the Hubba Bubba guy.
Yeah, why not? You're really sticking it to me.
Yeah, we're gonna watch The Living? The Living. Starring Ronda Rousey.
Was this by John Mason?
Look,
John
just be glad I put the one wrestling film you wanted to talk about on the schedule.
They Live by John Carpenter, starring Roddy Piper, next week. I'm very excited. Well, next fortnight for you, next week for me. But yeah, I'm looking forward to it. It's another John Carpenter movie. Yeah, I feel like we do a whole week on just John Carpenter stuff. But no, I am happy for the little scraps, the little morsels of our great Lord John Carpenter. When people talk about the Holy Carpenter, this is the one they're talking about.
Look, you should be.
I don't know why I got blasphemous in the end there, Grady. I'm very sorry.
It's okay, because the last film in this season is probably not a cult classic by most people's definitions, so I have to go hard on this one and give you a super cult classic, because I've stretched the definition a little bit for this season. I promise next season we're back.
I'm really curious as to what that last film is, because we discussed these films before, and so I kind of knew it was coming. Fighting with My Family was a bit of a surprise, but I already kind of knew that we were going to be doing High Noon at Mega Mountain and They Live. But this last one, total mystery. You said, nah, I'm not going to tell you. I'm going to keep it a secret, and it's just, I'm really jonesing for it, and I don't know what to tell you.
Well, you got to get through They Live first.
Yes. Anyway, thank you all for joining us this week on Cult Potato. Thank you for joining us as we discuss Fighting with My Family. As always, I am Campion, joined by my good buddy Grady. This has been the Lexicon of Lore, and we hope to see you all next time.